Good morning on this Sunday, August 13th, and welcome to the Georgia Gang. Former President Donald Trump could be indicted in Georgia this week as he goes on the attack against Fulton County DA Fani Willis. Also, more than 60,000 kids in Georgia lose Medicaid benefits due to missing paperwork. And should a Cobb County teacher be fired for reading a book on gender identity to her 5th grade class? Melita, Phil, Theron, and Danelle are all here. The debate and discussion begin right now.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
This could be the week a Fulton County grand jury delivers a 4th indictment against former President Donald Trump. Trump went on the attack this week against Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis. A new attack ad accuses Willis of having an inappropriate relationship with a former client. In an email to her colleagues obtained by the Associated Press, Willis called the accusations derogatory and false, and she urged her staff not to respond to the allegations. Phil, to you first this week. Willis also said that, quote, "We have no personal feelings against those we investigate or prosecute, and we should not express any. This is business. It will never be personal," unquote.
Well, I had to laugh when the district attorney said that because she has made it more personal. She's been fundraising off of this. She's actually attacked him inappropriately. I think that she's been unprofessional. You've had this rigged special grand jury with this airhead forewoman. You've already had her in a conflict of interest with the Lieutenant Governor, Burt Jones. She targeted him because he's a Trump ally. And even the judge had to say, wait a minute, this is wrong. You're out of line. So the whole thing is laughable, except what's sad, though, is the division, the polarization. The district attorney, as well as the former president, are taking flamethrowers to one another, and it's getting mean. It's getting polarized, and I also think, and we can talk about this later, I think that it's a total misuse of the RICO statute that the district attorney is using. That's supposed to be against murderers and gangs and things like that. It's not to be for political speech and political actions, and that's why I've always opposed this type of trial.
Well, we don't know if it's truly happening yet. I mean, we don't know if the RICO statute will be used.
She says she will use it.
We will see. Okay, but it hasn't happened yet. I just want to make sure we're clear on that. Theron, Trump's ad also says that Willis got caught hiding a relationship with a gang member she was prosecuting.
Look, I think that this district attorney definitely has come out and said that this is not true. And I think that she responded immediately to sort of say that this was something that she knew was probably going to happen, which is this is a track record of Donald Trump. Anytime you are presenting yourself as an opponent to him, he works to try to destroy your credibility. And that's what he's going to falsely and going to fail into attempting to try to destroy this district attorney's credibility. But also, Lori, he also called her racist. And for those of us who really, if you look at the prosecutorial track record of this district attorney, who she's actually prosecuting, I think you'd be hard pressed to find that a majority of those people who are going to jail that she's actually doing her job to prosecute are white men. And so this is, again, him trying to distract the American people, the people in Fulton County, from the real issues here. And the issues are that this district attorney has found enough evidence to assimilate a grand jury, to pull them together, and we know that charges are going to come down. We don't know if it's just going to be RICO. Another thing is, to Phil's point about fundraising, she's up for re-election soon, so every politician, man or female, has to raise money. Secondly, the Burt Jones situation, she did admit that it, optics-wise, did look bad, that she was on a fundraiser for an opponent at that time. And I think that ultimately this indictment is going to come down. This district attorney is going to make sure that everything is above board, and ultimately Donald Trump is going to continue to basically spread this polarization, this hate that's primarily coming from his camp and not the district attorney's camp.
Janelle, talk about the strategy that Trump is using here, just going after Fani Willis, and I mean really to the lowest of the low.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Trump way. Trump's petty. And I think we all know that, right? I mean, no one here is going to deny that Trump's petty. I mean, he is. That being said, I think, I'm going to see this from two different perspectives. One, I think that this is a bad move when it comes to this attack ad because it comes off a bit hypocritical. I think we saw in 2018, there was a survey in 2018 around the Stormy Daniels stuff that showed that 56% of Republicans that were surveyed believe that he did do what Stormy was saying, but they still supported him anyway. I think it proves that these type of attacks really don't change support. And then secondly, I feel like it's really playing into voters that's already going to vote for him. I think he needs to focus on the voters that are running away from him. And the way you do that is not by attacking her personal life, it's by highlighting some other things. Like, for instance, she gave an interview the last couple of weeks where she stated that this was a campaign promise and that she did tell some people that she would have this done by September 2023. So that makes it kind of weird. I know she dropped a new fundraising page on her website, which is real close to this new indictment, which is also something that shows that this is really deeply connected to some of her campaign promises. I think they should hang in that space and stay there and not go personal, particularly when it comes to this type of attacks, considering how President Trump has been attacked due to his personal life. So I think that was a little misguided, and I don't think it works for the people that are moving away from the president.
So, Melita, what do you think about this, that maybe it's not personal, as Fani Willis says, but as Janelle accuses, it's political?
Well, it's really interesting that the machine of Governor Kemp and the Republicans is blanketing suburban target districts with mailers right now accusing Democrats of standing with criminals, while these Republicans are standing in solidarity behind a party frontrunner who's already been indicted on 78 counts. And the other thing that we have to remember is it is not Fani Willis herself who returns the indictment. It is a jury of peers. And the jury is the purest form of democracy, because unlike elected officials of any kind, a jury is not tainted by any sort of campaign contribution or quid pro quo. And so what will happen is the highest form of democracy, when that jury decides which of the things, the evidence that Fani Willis and her team present, they choose to return indictments for.
Well, former Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan says he's been subpoenaed to testify as a witness before the Fulton County Grand Jury. The AJC reporting former State Senator Jen Jordan and former State Rep Bee Nguyen were also called to testify. Theron, talk about the insight that these folks can give to the grand jury.
Well, that was a game changer this week. I mean, let's just start with Jeff Duncan, right? A lieutenant governor that I know my good friend Phil Kent just loves. But this is
He's dead to me.
that was kind of a joke you read right there. But no, but to Phil's enthusiasm, this is a lieutenant governor who came in, served one term, and was very courageous while he was still lieutenant governor to sort of say enough is enough with this former president, right? He was very critical of President Trump, has come out and basically also not criticized former President Trump, but has been very concerned about the direction of his party. So I'm very interested to hear what he's going to say. But now you start getting into the Jen Jordans of the world, and then Bee Nguyen, two women who ran for statewide office, who are very well-trained lawyers. I think Bee Nguyen is a lawyer too, right? No. Oh, she's not. Okay, sorry. Well-trained, former elected officials, with Jen Jordan being a well-trained lawyer and Bee Nguyen just being a phenomenal woman who basically was really a good legislator. So I would be very interested in how they sort of bring their sort of elements to this grand jury.
Well, both of them listened in on the Rudy Giuliani testimony, right? That's something to point out, Phil.
Was prancing in front of the committees that both of them sat on, maskless at a time when everyone else was wearing a mask, practically spitting on people because of the way he talked. And they challenged him. They challenged his evidence. They challenged what he was trying to say. And the two of them stood up to Rudy Giuliani in a big, big way.
Phil.
Well, I think the whole thing is kind of theater here. I mean, going back to Jeff Duncan, I mean, the guy has basically trashed his own Republican Party. He couldn't have gotten elected dog catcher in the primary last year. He's now on CNN. And so, again, a lot of this is just the usual Democrat propaganda and attacks against Trump.
Janelle, close us out.
Okay, I'm a little bit different. So I don't have a problem with people within the party having differences of opinions. I'm totally fine with that. I think the issue with Jeff Duncan is that he tends to go to the left for credibility, and that's where it looks weird. It looks like, you're just being used. But I do want to add, too, that especially when we're talking about the mask thing, I mean, we saw plenty of Democrats, Nancy Pelosi, Stacey Abrams, who were not masked while everyone else around them are masked. So, Kamala Harris, that's just something I think is just a weak attack. But again, I do think that I'm interested to hear what Jeff Duncan is going to say, because I don't think he was a part of all of this. So I am interested to see what his testimony would be.
You think he's good looking, nice hair?
I think Jeff Duncan has great hair.
All right, we'll leave it there, everybody. Up next, a big jump in state revenues, what that means for state agencies next.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
State tax collections are up big in the first month of the fiscal year, 13% compared to the same month last year. Melita, part of the reason, of course, is the gas tax is back. But even when you factor that in, state revenues are up 5%. And the governor is telling state agencies they can ask for a 3% increase in spending. That's a big chunk.
That is a big chunk. And we're sitting on about a $10 billion with a B surplus. And so either the state economist, who's about to be swapped out, was off in his projections, or the Republicans have been parsimonious in their doling out of new programs and approving pay raises for state employees. So there's more than one way to look at this surplus.
Phil.
Well, you have to be careful with inflation and Bidenomics, as they call it. It was a conservative approach. Let me just remind the Republican legislature has a AAA bond rating, one of the few states that have that. Even the Biden administration screwed that up, and now we're down lowered to a AA, which is terrible. So now we have some money, which is the plan. We were hoping to get more money, and hopefully it'll get in from things like infrastructure, which we need in education.
Go ahead, Melita.
That hit about the AA national bond rating, in the fine print, it has a lot more to do with governmental instability and the fact that Republicans continue to call for a government shutdown than it does about Biden administration policies.
It called it federal leadership. It called them out. Biden is the president, not a Republican.
But there is a Republican-controlled House
they can't
which
do anything.
continues to call for budget shutdowns.
Okay, we'll leave it there. We knew this was coming. The latest report shows some 60,000 kids in Georgia lost access to Medicaid because of a lack of paperwork. And advocates say parents may not realize this until they need to take their kids to the doctor. Theron.
So this is a tough one, as Janelle would say, right? Because I personally and professionally know that the state of Georgia, the governor, folks in his office, commissioners care deeply about this issue. I know that they are doing everything they possibly can to try to communicate with the public, particularly Georgians, who are eligible for this redetermination of Medicaid. However, I do now think that to hear that these people were not properly maybe notified or didn't necessarily get the paperwork in. I think I saw 265 people enrolled. I know that the state is going to come out and say, all right, well, that was a quick number, but we're going to do more than that.
That's a separate issue. That's the governor's new Medicaid waiver programs.
Yeah,
we're going to get to that.
Yeah, I'll get to that. So, but I think they kind of go in together, Lori, because when the redetermination issue was going on, I know that the governor was also meeting a tough deadline that I think was July 1 to push out this program, which the 265 people responded to. But let me just say this. It is something that we all need to work on, the Medicaid redetermination and this new program that the governor has, and I think that you'll start to see counties and other people work with them as well.
Janelle, like all states after the pandemic, I mean, Georgia is just checking the eligibility of its almost 3 million Medicaid recipients, but if people move, if they can't be located or they miss the communications, I mean, what happens to them? There's got to be a better process for this.
I think the process is, adulthood, right? I mean, I know I always go there, but that's just really what it is. Well, they have parents, right? So, I mean, the kids are not the ones that's filling out the application. It's their parents that's responsible for it. In order to make sure that you don't fall through the crack, you have to be on top of your own information. I mean, the state can do but so much. And I think this is why I personally think that the whole healthcare process needs to go back to the private sector, and that government should be responsible for creating policies to make it easy for private sectors to be able to issue insurance to individuals. Then when you have the government involved, now the government becomes the parent, and we expect our government to be the one that's like telling you and making sure you get things done. There's but so much we can do when you're talking about 3 million people.
All right,
so
let's
you have
talk
to be on top of
the
it.
governor's program, Pathways to Coverage, which, as Theron had mentioned, has enrolled 265 people who now qualify for Medicaid. This is part of the governor's Medicaid expansion for folks whose employers don't provide health care but make too much to qualify for federal subsidies. Melita, your thoughts on this?
Well, Kemp's plan costs the state more to implement than full expansion would cost. And so to say that you only have 265 people who've enrolled when there is a potential for more than 300,000 who could re-enroll, that's a real strong signal that program is not working well. Just as the fact that you have 95,000 disenrollments for Medicaid, going back to our previous subject, as compared to only 64,000 re-enrollments. So when programs are obviously not working, that is a strong signal that the state government needs to find another solution.
Phil, I need you to respond, but quickly.
Well, I think that's unfair. This is just ramping up, and we're going to have over 90,000 plus people. These are people that cannot get onto the Obamacare plan, too. These are the poorest of the poor. And so I think Governor Kemp needs to be commended for this. Just to attack him just when this has just started is very unfair.
All right, I want to move on because current Labor Commissioner Bruce Thompson is pointing the finger at his predecessor, Mark Butler. Thompson says an audit shows more than $100 million in revenue sitting in the agency's accounts, and it's been accumulating for years. Now, state law requires all revenue agencies generated must be sent back to the general fund. Darren, is this something is there a there, or as Mark Butler says, this is political theater?
Well, it may be both, because Commissioner Butler came in but didn't, leave, I think, in the greatest light. He didn't run for re-election because of personal reasons, but there have been audits that sort of uncover a lot of similar things within the Department of Labor. As a former Department of Labor employee back in my early days, I just remember how important it was for the Labor Commissioner to have a good working relationship with the governor and making sure that that agency that is so important, not just for unemployment and insurance and people when they're basically having this temporary assistance, but to make sure that the money that's being generated through the Department of Labor is being publicly transparent to how it sort of works with the state budget. So now, shout out to Bruce Thompson, who's gotten in there and sort of uncovered this, but to attack Mark Butler for it just shows that I think that Thompson is sort of saying, hey, this is going to be unveiled. I don't want to have my fingerprints on it anymore. So I really hope that now Labor Commissioner Thompson is going to work with everyone there and previous employees like Mark Butler to really deal with this issue.
Phil?
Well, former Commissioner Butler needs to be criticized, and this is outrageous. It's a shocker. And I'm glad that, yes, the current Commissioner, Bruce Thompson, and the auditors found this. That's a lot of money, and it demands an investigation.
A lot of money when people could not get their unemployment
exactly
benefits
right.
because there were not enough employees to
And the offices were
process.
shut during
Yes,
COVID?
yes.
That's right.
All right. Well, up next, should a Cobb County teacher be fired for reading a controversial book to her 5th grade class on gender identity? We'll discuss next.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
A Cobb County teacher who has been on leave for more than a month over a controversial book could find out soon if she'll be able to keep her job. Due West Elementary 5th grade teacher Katie Rinderly read a book to her 5th graders which challenged gender norms. Now, the district says her decision to read it in class violates the new divisive concepts law. Now, I want to run the table on this one. Janelle, I'll start with you.
Yeah, she does not need to have her job back because clearly, I mean, even if you didn't know what the policy was, you shouldn't be so tone deaf. Everyone's talking about this. We all know that anything that's centered around challenging gender norms with a transgender character in the book is going to be controversial, and that's something that you need to speak with the parents about. Again, this is not about the LGBTQ community. This is about talking about sexuality to children, whether you're heterosexual or homosexual. You should not talk about that without parents present, and that's just it. I don't think there needs to be any more discussion.
Melita?
Well, I think that when you read the kinds of things that were being talked about in the hearing on Thursday, you learn that the policy is not terribly clear, the law is not terribly clear, and so if people are going to lose their jobs, the laws and the policies need to be clear enough that people understand what they are.
Phil?
It was very clear. She was insubordinate, and that's number one. And she's a disgrace as an educator. And number two, you don't deal with this type of topic when you're already told that that's not going to be the topic. And so, yeah, she had to be fired, and I think she appealed, which she had a right to do, and she had her grievances aired, and 3 principals were actually reviewing everything, and they said she was wrong, and you cannot do this. And I think it's up to any school board to have these norms. I don't want my 6-year-old granddaughter being asked, what gender are you? I mean, I think it's totally inappropriate to go into this, especially with young people like she was doing.
Darren, was she wrong?
Reading a children's book in a classroom is not against the law. All right, let's just, let's say that right. Now, you can read a children's book,
We all
right?
agree.
Okay, we agree with that.
There are norms, though.
It's to Melita's point, It's what is sort of needs to be revisited in this law about what can you read that's in that children's book. And I think we also got to be mindful, guys, even though we are, heterosexual and we have a 2-parent household, there are gay LGBTQ parents out there that actually send their kids to school. So I just think we just got to be mindful that in 2023 that does exist.
You're missing the point,
This is about
though.
sexuality. This is
But-
not
but
about,
Try to propagandize
it's not about
this,
the LGBTQ,
this
it's
agenda.
about sexuality.
but my-
And no, the answer is no.
But my point is that we don't know if this teacher was trying to do that. She was,
Yeah,
she
we
was
do.
reading the book. No, she was reading the book.
Well, she should have
and-
asked.
That was wrong.
should have asked.
She was
I'm sure
insubordinate.
you
She
should
was
ask.
insubordinate.
So that's what the appeal process was.
Melita, quickly.
But children as young as my 5-year-old granddaughter know when their classmates have 2 mommies or, in some cases, 2 daddies. So
Yeah, but they don't
you
know what
can't-
those parents are doing in their bedroom. So we don't need to be talking about sexuality
I don't
and how
think
do
this
you.
book explained that either.
Well, when you start talking about what you identify with, or when you start talking about who you love and all that stuff, it gets a little tricky and questions start to arise. And those questions need to be answered by parents. That's all we're saying.
All right, moving on. Governor Brian Kemp outlining this week another priority for him in the upcoming session, tort reform. Now, it doesn't sound sexy, but it's extremely important. The governor says he wants to make it harder for people to file frivolous lawsuits and win big legal cases, saying that these lawsuits are driving up insurance costs. Now, Phil, this is an age-old debate. Is there proof that if you take action, the insurance companies will actually lower rates?
Yes, in fact, other states like Texas are doing this, and what is a disgrace, just the Wall Street Journal editorial page called Georgia one of the worst states in the nation, a judicial hellhole was the words of the editorial. Why? Because it goes to your point. The purpose of trying to get tort reform, there's several purposes, but one of them is to try to get these insurance premiums lowered, when we're dealing with insurance companies. And Governor Kemp made that point in the chamber luncheon the other day. And of course, we want fair compensation for those that are injured. That's another point.
Y'all are
of
ready to
tort
jump on
reform.
this.
And
Melita.
the trial lawyers should not
Melita.
be dominating this state.
Melita.
Well, I believe that the studies in Texas, the most studied state, did not prove that insurance premiums would go down. Without civil litigation, we would still be having cigarettes sold to minors. We would be driving unsafe vehicles. We wouldn't have the assurance that medical practices and drugs were safe for consumption. So the civil litigation system depends on a jury of your peers and a citizen being able to take things in front of a jury, and tort reform would cut that at the knees.
Janelle, quickly.
So for business owners, it's not about necessarily the insurance going down. It's about how it goes up whenever you get these frivolous lawsuits and you have to pay, even though you know you're going to win the case, but you still have to pay attorney fees, your insurance goes up, and it costs things. Businesses right now want to invest their money into their sales. They want to invest in developing new products and services, and so that they can increase their revenue so they can stay in business.
Theron, final word.
I just think this is going to be a big issue for the governor, and shout out to the Georgia Chamber. I did get a chance to make that luncheon before the indictment came out. But for the governor to quadruple down on it, all the members of Congress, Insurance Commissioner John King talked about it, and I know that the Georgia Chamber is going to make it a major problem too, but they're going up against a very powerful organization at GTLA, and a lot of Democrats right now kind of locked down on this tort reform issue. So I think that this is going to be a humongous issue at the Capitol.
All right, and we'll be talking about it. We'll leave it there. Coming up, winners and losers. Stay tuned.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
All right, Melita, we'll start with you, and we have to give a shout out to Martha Zoller for finally getting Senator Warnock on her radio show. So.
And a fine interview it was.
Yes.
My winner is Fayette County's star middle school teacher, Christy Todd, who's been named the 2024 Georgia Teacher of the Year. She's a music teacher who created a program that encourages students to do podcasts and create songs, and they have a little channel called Hall Pass Entertainment.
Nice, very nice. No losers?
My loser would be Alabama Senator Tommy Tuberville, because Georgia has so many military bases, and he is holding up appointments for critical U.S. military positions. And as it turns out, this, quote, senator from Alabama actually lives in Florida.
Phil.
Well, he's my hero because he's trying to stop all of this woke garbage and anyhow, what I want to do is I want to do a winner. And Theron and I did mention last week about the Plant Vogtle Unit 3 coming online, clean, safe nuclear power for the next 60 to 80 years. But we forgot to mention the 5 members of the Public Service Commission, because over the years, in the late 70s till now, they were steadfast, and in spite of bankruptcies and and the changing of federal regulations, and so that's a good thing. And the loser is our sorry Commander-in-Chief Joe Biden, the president. The Gold Star mothers testified before Congress this past week, some heart-wrenching stories about the chaotic and failed Afghan withdrawal, which never should have happened. It's a disgrace.
Fair.
Loser.
I'll go quickly from last week. Jimmy Etheridge from Accenture, COO, is going to be retiring. Also, Marco Beatty, a good friend of ours, Open Bartiamo. And also want to basically congratulate Bill Noggett. It was announced this week that AJC is hiring him. He's back. He's going to be doing Politically Georgia on WABE. He'll be joining myself, Brian Robinson, and Lisa Ram. So definitely want to make them winners as well. And then also, I definitely want to make sure that Andre Diggins, all the great work that he's doing, we didn't get a chance to talk about this, but he's actually working towards ending and reducing the issue of homelessness in our city.
We'll get to it next week, hopefully.
Janelle.
So more and more people are focusing on eating clean and wanting to get food straight from the farmers, and I want to support our local farmers. So I found this cool website that I want to share called eatwild.com. Eatwild.com. You should go and check that out and get some good farm food.
All right, sounds good. A quick programming note about next week's show. Because the Women's World Cup final is airing early next Sunday morning here on Fox 5, we'll be with you a little later than usual, so you can tune in next Sunday morning at 11:30 a.m. for Georgia Gang. We'll see you then. Thanks for watching, everybody.